So a thought that comes into my mind is you're talking on a micro and a macro level
Yeah.
change. And I just feel like, because it's all interconnected, and you're talking about the light and the love, and that's what we are, that's what the soul is. And so I ask myself, well, it just seems like there's so much negative energy now in the world.
Yeah.
So much, not just here, but worldwide, so much escalation of negativity or hate, gun violence, you name it. And so think about all that and, try to make sense of, we're here to emanate love and light. Is that a means to get to a better place? Is it just like a single thing? Or
I'm really grateful that you brought this up, because it gives us a chance to bring this into the group awareness so that we can serve that through this experience.
I have a hard time wrestling with what's going on, not only in this country, but the excess, the greed, the hate.
Yeah.
The, certainly been escalated, since our new president came.
Yeah.
But was always there, it just seems like.
Well, as I said to you, we are love. We are love and light. And we're here to bring change into the physical world through connection to that. I'm not saying that we're also not all those human experience, because we're also part of a physical world that is that is subject to corruption, that's subject to the dark, that's subject to all layers of depravity and manipulation. And most of us have accessed our light through, in some way, coming into contact in a very direct way with that. Our essence is love and light. But I think that our human personality and a lot of our emotionality, because we're energetically sensitive, is also caught up in that. And so I think it's really honest of you to say, yeah, I'm impacted by what's going on in the world. And I say to you, why the hell shouldn't you be? I don't think we should be denying to ourselves how uncomfortable we feel with what's going on at all. And I think it's to be celebrated that you care that much. We're not aiming to be detached people who don't care about what's happening. It's more like, what is our responsibility within this, truly? And how can any of us really make a difference to this in the long term? These are questions I've asked myself a lot, because I know that meeting anything in a conflictual capacity only escalates that. It feeds it, right? So what if we could be totally empowered as ourselves in the world, not tolerating abuse? What if we could be an example for others that need that in the world? What if that what if that counts for a lot more than we even know?
That's what you almost wonder if there's a reason that we're going through this right now.
Yeah.
I'm talking, it's a major change.
Major changes. I mean, we're all incarnated at a time of really momentous planetary change. You can see this in so many different ways, but it's a very polarized environment that we find ourselves in. And there's a lot of reactivity and a lot of pain. And there's also a rise in a level of consciousness, like all of us here together. I don't think this was happening to the extent that it was 50 years ago. I mean, groups like us coming together, talking like this, talking about our humanity like this, actually choosing to retrieve our and own our humanity instead of giving our power away to authorities that are corrupt. We have a choice within this. Right now, all of us here, we do. Because each person that really does empower themselves through love and breaks the chain of reactivity, conflict, and trauma, because it takes a lot to heal yourself, to retrieve our humanity, to go on this adventure, to go on this journey of really who we are is so much more than what is being portrayed. That is my responsibility for a world that's going through a great deal of transformation
and turmoil.
Yeah, so how can I find peace in my experience in a world in turmoil for the world? How can I find respect when in a world where very few people are? Though there's also, let's also get real about what information we're receiving, because at the same time there's an awful lot of incredible stuff happening in the world that never gets reported. Whatever you think about the current political situation in your own country, the majority of people in your country are good people. We also need to get real about what is going on instead of just what is being reported to us. Let's also acknowledge that the majority of humans on this planet are good, because I hear this time and time again that human nature is corrupted, that people are bad. That's not what I'm seeing.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
The leaders or some of them. Yeah. But I mean, it's the vast majority. I agree with you.
It's a really tall order, and I acknowledge every one of you. I think it's absolutely heroic to be faced with everything we are on a physical and emotional level, and to have what it takes to commit to what we know to be true about ourselves and others, and what we know to be true about life. And there's nobody we need to convert in that process, you know? But let's not also underestimate the value of that as a contribution, because each of us has something to offer. All the world's problems, if you look at them, are really quite simple to solve. It's the psychology, isn't it, though? If you look at them, like poverty, hunger, warfare, I mean, we could stop. We've got enough money to feed the world. We could stop warfare overnight. It doesn't need to carry on. We don't need to, all of these problems it's not the fact that they're not easy to solve. It's the psychology and the structures around that. So what if each of us just shows up in our lives free from the psychology and whatever else it is that's keeping that alive, and stand up and join together in our truth, in our true humanity. I think each of us has got a unique role to play in this time of change. I don't think anybody incarnates at this time that isn't very much intimately involved in this transformation. And I do think it takes a great deal of self-care actually to be alive right now, because there's a huge amount of energetic transformation taking place that takes a bit of a toll on our physical bodies. and that the changes taking place show up in the most personal aspects of our lives, because it's a change that we're sharing with our planet. And it's a change that's ultimately supporting humanity.
And to me, it feels like a very pivotal time.
Yeah.
That's what we need now.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful.
Yeah.
It's important.
I mean, we all know what this planet could be, what this planet really is, what humanity is, what humanity could be. Let's keep that dream alive by how we serve it in our own experience.
I resonate with Marsha's concerns.
Mm.
And I wanted to add, because part of my experience is as an activist, but also as somebody who lived in Washington, D.C. for 12 years and is really has some level of familiarity with the structures that are constantly, affecting the world as well as this nation's capital. And I agree with you that self-care is important, and I agree with you that you perhaps, whether we understand it or not, or whether we don't have any idea of it, that there are roles that we can play simply by being alive at this time. But what concerns me is a false level of comfort.
Mm-hmm.
A false level of comfort with things because we're working, and I'm not saying anybody's doing this here, but I do hear this from people who are working on themselves, and it's somehow magically this will change the world. And my experience speaks to a more complex, unclear law that unintended consequences, etc., around this. And one example I can give is like, what can people do? And it's something that I did, but it was just it's a very micro thing. And that is, I have some neighbors, one of whom works in a gun store, a local gun store, and he has a lot to say about his experiences doing that. And he's a very thoughtful young man. And because we don't know each other deeply, but because we've had contact over time, he's open about how he sees the society around him, how he sees it functioning from his point of view. And he said to me, but I just have to shut down on it. I can't, I can't be involved in it. I can't do that. And I hear that a lot from people who, as a form of self-protection, they're disengaged.
Yes.
Okay. And I understand that because I was over-engaged for a long time, and that has its own impact. So, but the very small thing I said to him when he said that is, I want you to know, and I've said this to a few people recently, I want you to know that I can't carry this for you. This is, I've had to tell people, we don't have to worry about politics because that's what you do. And I'm like, I'm not hearing that anymore. And I'm not saying it should be politics, because we've got revolutions at multiple levels. It's not just politics, obviously, as people know. But not only that I can't carry it for him, I said, you need to wake up and stand up. And that is, I was able to say, you don't tell someone you don't know that, because it's obnoxious and it comes from a point of, delivering orders to people. It's completely counterproductive. But if there are relationships, if somehow in the course of our daily interactions, we can come together with people who don't agree with or who want to retreat in this situation. I'm not saying that what I did will have any impact at all, and that's not what it's about. It's not about whether how important I am. It's more, even in a micro sense, it's more how can you be in that moment with someone and offer not an order, but offer in the context of the conversation this was okay. But in some measure, something maybe a little less in your face than that, but how to open up the dialogue with someone who you have a rapport with, but not necessarily have a lot in common in terms of your experience. So I worry about false detachment.
Yeah.
Because I think that a lot of people use spirituality to disengage.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. And I think it's a really good point. Or what you could call the shadow side of spirituality is the same as, you know, drinking or taking drugs, because it's like a form of avoidance. So it's just doing the same thing. It's actually helping people to do what that guy was doing, which is cutting off, disengaging. So spirituality is like a lot of things. It's how you're using it. And what I see it as doing is giving us actually the ability to engage, because you need a lot of courage to engage. And these are the tools of engagement. It's like how, you know, not just on several times in our lives, we're going to be in situations where we're facing some of our greatest fears. That's relative to all of us, because it could be even speaking in public for someone, you know, or it could be seeing a snake if you're phobic of them. I mean, these are not necessary. This is all relative, but at some point we're going to be facing our fears, and we can do what a lot of people do. Is like what you're describing is we can disengage. We can disengage in those situations. We can be invisible. We can disappear. We can do whatever survival techniques we've learned, or we can use the tools of actual awareness, which is what quality spiritual, because I'm even uncomfortable with the word spirituality actually, because I can't see the spirit as being separate from our experience. It's not like, I'm having a sort of spiritual epiphany, you know. The point of that is being able to show up in our own lives so that we can engage with people in the way that you just did with that young man, because we care enough to do so. And I love the way it was so natural for you to say what you did to him, because usually what I feel from my own personal experience is that we lead by example. Because if people told me what to do when I was younger, I usually kind of did the opposite. But when you were speaking, I thought there were occasionally people that did give me a kind of kick in the ass like that, and it was just what I needed to hear. So I really felt that the power of that as someone who cares the way that you did to show up in that way. But I get what you mean about a false level of comfort, as in trying to make everything nice when it's really not. No, that is actually dishonest. Okay, it's like saying, I feel fine when I'm in pieces inside. No, I think spirituality, gives us the courage to face ourselves first, because if we can face ourselves and our own experience, we're ready to face the world. We can't, it's like, how can we face the world when we haven't faced? How can we face the darkest aspect of us, of the world, when we haven't faced that within us first? I think that, the Dalai Lama said something really interesting about how can we bring peace to the world when we haven't brought peace to ourselves? I mean, what a great point is that. How on earth can we make peace in the world if we don't know what that means? If like we come from sort of just generations of conflict, and you've had people dying that you love, and retaliation as this kind of form for generations. How can we make peace with that until we've made peace with that in ourselves? And what spirituality can do, for want of a better word, is give us the tools, give us to have the courage to heal. Because how on earth can we break that chain? And I don't think that's a false level of comfort. I think that's giving us the courage to be as uncomfortable as we actually are with the situation as it is. But I also think that what I see in politics and what I see in academia is almost an attachment to a false level of discomfort. Underneath pain, underneath everything that it entails to be a human being, we are love. And I think connecting to that is beyond comfort. We are whole. We are whole within that, and we are divine. I don't say that because I like the sound of it. I have seen that through researching it in my own experience, and it has just come again and again and again. That is what human nature shows me. So I also challenge that assumption, because I think it's safe. I think it's actually safe to say, oh, we're going to hell in a handbasket. Oh, because guess what? It lets us off the hook. Oh, we don't have to be responsible anymore. We can just kind of sit back and watch bad TV for the rest of our lives, because the world's going to pot anyway. I get totally what you're saying about spirituality, and at the same time I think, spirituality can actually allow us to be real. And I think that's also cutting edge spirituality. I mean, I think that's why Amanda and I use the words new ideas in spiritual empowerment, because it isn't like just this idea that we have to ignore everything that's unpleasant. But I have a lot of questions around this myself, because I know the soul reality to be one of bliss and love. And I can see why the new ages are like, well, we've got to connect to that vibrationally. I can see why, because there's a truth in that too. And just the way that I see it is that, how can we bring that reality into the world without it meaning that we're using it to say whitewash experience, but instead using it to actually be able to show up in a loving way. But I feel the power for myself is just embodying what I'm sharing with you today to the best of my ability, which is hugely challenging for me. Because it's like, as well, to live up to these words. So, but I feel that I think we lead by example, and I think our responsibility is to take responsibility for our happiness and our fulfillment, which I think allows us, as I said in the service, to be able to give more. Because if we're not taking care of ourselves on that level, then we simply will burn out, and we will also get very resentful. If you think about life itself, I really feel we have incarnated to experience also beauty, to experience what life is offering us as well. And sometimes I think we dismiss that as not being mature enough, where there's a lot of love being offered to us through life, as in, what are we missing by seeing the worst in the world that is being offered to us, that wants our joy, that wants our fulfillment? It's like, what does a parent want most from its child? A parent that loves its child just wants the child to be happy. And whatever it is behind the kind of the force of our own incarnation, it wants that for us. And that's our birthright. And I think actually embodying that as an example for all beings on the planet, that squares very comfortably for me. But I can honestly say I don't always feel comfortable about talking about this in official settings, because I feel like so naive. But I think it's the truth. And I really enjoyed I really enjoyed listening to this, because it's, and thank you for bringing this up, because it's so juicy, isn't it? It's really what we as conscious beings, we need to be asking these questions and having these talks. And I think that's the purpose of us getting together in this way. So, and also to keep an eye on, I'm very lucky, I've got good friends that reflect stuff back to me, that when I am bypassing, there's a term you may have heard of, like spiritual bypassing, which is actually because people judge, for example, the emotional experience in spirituality, and it's like they judge anything negative as being low vibrational. But what I've seen is that what is low vibrational is when we are trying to make something positive that's not. That's actually really low vibrational, because you've got falsity and conflict at the same time. Whereas if you just say, I just feel terrible, there's no way out of this hole, there's that honesty is much higher vibrational. So
well, I think what you're saying is to hold both together, and that's an extremely difficult thing to do. I'm not saying, just do it. But to be present to what we're judging as positive, but also to be aware of the negativity and try to work with integrating the being presence to all of it in a way that perhaps opens up the possibility of dealing with this differently. All right, so that so that you're not just seen as naive for talking about love in a situation where people find it very hard to connect to that. I'm thinking of London right now, when you're talking about that. And then, again, I don't want to further monopolize this, but I just think the both and aspect of this is, it's a much more, it's robust as some empiricists would say, but it's a much fuller way of being in the world, but it requires a lot more cultivated attention than we often feel like we have the energy to have, I guess.
And
I can speak for me in that, not.
I hear you, and I think that is why self-care is so important, because it's like it takes a lot. And when you were talking, I really thought, wow, this is almost what the transformation that's going on planetarily is all about. Because it's really about being honest, isn't it? It's like when things are bad, they're bad, but also when they're good, they're good. You know what I mean? Sometimes we have to learn how to be that honest, and our own experience teaches us that. And I think that honesty is very empowering. I think it is the tool that allows us to have that level of balance. And it goes deeper than that, because it's like trusting ourselves within all the changes that are taking place in our own lives planetarily, and that we can somehow, as beings we're somehow holding the very lightest of the very lightest of incarnation, the very darkest as a species. I mean, the way that the light and dark interact is almost the momentum of transformation that's taking place. And this is such a deep discussion. We could go on for hours, but and maybe we can create we could just have at the end of the holding light, maybe just a session to have a discussion about everything that's come up. That would be really great.
Well, it's 12:31, and I just wanted to say a few things, if that's okay. This has been a very dynamic session today, and I always like to talk politics. So I was very grateful because of just the theme of change, but also really about getting rid of the judgment that we have of ourselves and healing ourselves and finding peace of ourselves. Because I find that I don't have that trust that it vacillates. And I think that you're spot on, that it takes a tremendous amount of trust in the systems, planetary, everything, to trust yourself. I mean, that you're, so some people say higher power, God, whatever, but like that trust of the trust. And I got a lot out of today because even, I was at a spiritual gathering, and I liked also the way you said about, that we're always spiritual, and you don't really like that word spiritual, because the more I say it, I kind of get annoyed by it too.
Yeah, I do too.
But, I found myself in a conversation with women who are activists on Friday night after just leaving kind of one of my fellowship groups. And it's just amazing how we don't normally talk about political matters, but we did. And I found myself so angry and very, but not angry, like I felt like I was speaking my truth, and how often I judge that I'm not allowed to feel that way. And how I'm not allowed to be angry at what I'm seeing. But I have these aspirations to be calm and loving and all of that sort of stuff. So I was very grateful for what you guys brought up today, because in lies that was the judgment that I have in myself, that I can't be both these things. That I have to have my thoughts and belief systems look like something out, like that new ager. and I feel crazy because I do go. I'm like, rah, and I care, and I'll hear somebody say, I love it when you get like that. And then I'm like, and then I'll have somebody else who's like, God, settle down, So it's like, how can I just be what I am and who I am, forgive who I am, not judge who I am, not care what other people think, and just be. And today, I shed tears several times because I am so done with that. I am heard something with Allison yesterday about how, like, things feel like they're rising to the top right now, and that's because they need to get out. They're on their way out. And so I was just really grateful for all the the journey that we went on today, and I really needed to hear it, and I'm really grateful for all of you and having this space to talk about stuff that I think people don't want to talk about, and also are maybe fearful of what others would think of them. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, such a pleasure. Yeah, I was actually asking myself always, how can I make really lasting changes to the world? And that was the question itself that got me into spirituality. And that question got me into politics, and it got me out of politics. So I'll just leave you with that. Everything is changing. Believe me, politics are changing. What the world's gonna look like in a year's time is gonna be very different. I mean, look at how it's changed in the last year. So yeah, this is why I think with all those changes, that's why I'm saying it doesn't mean we have to fall apart with them. Sometimes we may need to, but we also have got everything we need to meet these changes. And that's what I'm also reflecting back to you, that as daunting as these changes may feel, there's one part of you that's relishing it. Things coming to a head is not the same as the end of the world. And I wrote that last year, but it was very much about the global situation, and everything that we put in the mix energetically, it adds to what the world is becoming. And it does start with our relationship to ourselves, because our relationship to ourselves is our relationship to life. When we look at that psychologically, we can't understand how powerful that is. It's just something that you can know the power of without understanding it. And that's to do with your understanding of energy. We're literally holding lights in the world for the world to remember itself as light in this way, so that everybody benefits. And how far could we take that? That's what I'm excited about. I mean, what I said about we don't really understand even what we're capable as human beings, but how could we bring the vision of what we know the planet to be into being? And it's not so much about what we're doing or striving towards, it's about it letting it be what it already is. It's like a paradise, it's like an earthly paradise, this planet. And that's how I see human beings, the truth of who they are. All these different levels of reality that we're simultaneously deeply engaged with. And I encourage you all to stay present with it as much as you can, because it's like you want that connection, even when it's uncomfortable. You want that connection. You want that connection to this time, to this experience. We're very lucky to be living in these times, to be honest with you. To see this level of transformation, to see this level of potential, what's emerging, to be part of what's emerging. So let's see where we can take this and how we can do that in the process of letting things be and almost letting it, just like Amanda said, what if you stopped managing yourself through judgment and what you think you should be, and really relate to what you are? And imagine if we related to everybody like that. I honor you, each of you, in your unique contribution to the transformation taking place on the planet at this time, truly, and your courage.